Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today with the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I have a really good episode today interviewing Matthew Hughes. Matthew Hughes is a former consular officer at several U.S. Department of State embassies and consulates. We'll ask specifically which ones you're at. I'm guessing you were at both. Embassy in, I think, Nepal, was it?
That's right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So just get started. Matthew, tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, good. Thanks so much, John, for having me. I really enjoy your podcast, and I like everything I see from you on social media, so I appreciate being here today. In terms of my State Department career, I started out in Kathmandu, Nepal. I ran the immigrant visa unit there, but really did everything. And you really do see everything in Nepal in terms of including refugee processing, which is something you don't see in a lot of places in the world. And then I was also in Nepal. I worked as econ officer. Then Belize, saw a lot of stuff there too. In Belize, non-immigrant and immigrant visas, but really a ton of American citizen services. And then finally here in Munich, Germany, where I worked for 3 years running the visa section. It's strictly an NIV processing post in Munich.
Interesting. So let's go into all those in detail. But before that, where did you grow up and how did you get into law and then to the State Department?
Yeah, I grew up near Boston. I kind of lived in a few different parts of the country after I graduated from college, but I decided to go to law school. I kind of fell in love with criminal law, actually. Then I clerked in D.C., practiced or worked as a public defender in Philadelphia for 3 years. And then after 3 years of that in Philadelphia, I was getting kind of tired of criminal law. And that's when the State Department thing came along, and I was able to jump into that. The timing was right. And I had a very supportive wife who was also excited about it. So.
Wonderful. Did you have any kids at that time?
I did not. No, my wife was pregnant at the time.
Oh, that's a big decision. Decide to go live random parts of the world with a pregnant wife.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So yeah, but yeah, she was pregnant, and we had our baby in DC. My first child, who was like 8 months old when she went to Nepal. So we had a very small baby in Nepal, and then we had a second child while we were in Nepal. My wife wanted to make sure that we had electricity when she gave birth. So she gave birth back in the States. We brought our other baby back to Nepal. And she was 8 months old when we left Nepal. So the entire time we had very small kids, which was a special experience for her.
Interesting. So you didn't have to go through the CBRE or Consular Birth Abroad process.
Oh yeah, no. We did it back here in the States. The State Department will generally send you home, especially if you're in development.
So how difficult was the process for state? I mean, you have to go through a lot of background checks and tests. How long did that process from start to finish happen until they accepted you? And then you got language school you probably had to go to and then be chosen which embassy. How did that all work out?
Yeah, so I guess probably from the application process probably took a little bit under 18 months or so from taking the Foreign Service test. And then going through all like the various stages and finally getting the call to come to Washington to do the in-person interviews that they do, and then background checks and done a lot of traveling, lived in a bunch of different places. So background checks took a while, less than a year, but quite a while anyhow. And then I finally got the call. So
did they tell you Nepal, or did they give you a choice of different embassies?
Yeah, sorry. So before I guess went to DC, and then we have the A100 class, which is what the State Department calls its orientation class. And that lasts a little bit more than a month. And then at the end of that, they have a flag day and they tell you where you're going. So you kind of rank order your choices, but at the end of the day, it's really the department's call. Some people are really happy about where they get sent to. I was one of them. And some people are less happy about it, but for the most part, everybody just kind of, keeps their chin up and goes and does their first tour.
Is Nepal considered a hardship post?
It is, yeah.
Okay. And which consular cone were you going for?
Well, I was consular cone, so
cone. Yeah, you were a consular cone. You're going straight for it.
consular cone. I did a little bit of economic work in Nepal, but with the exception of that, I did straight consular tours. So I liked working with people, and coming from sort of my criminal defense side, I like the idea of working directly with applicants, and also with American citizens who were in sticky situations, maybe had criminal problems or mental health issues. So
Yeah.
it was something that really I found attractive.
A consular cone, as an immigration attorney, I find that really interesting. But imagine not everyone that's going to be a foreign officer does that. Do the people who choose consular cone do so knowing that they're going to be dealing with visas, or what is the perception internally from your experience of people that learning that they're going to be dealing with B1, B2s all day, essentially, for a large segment? What is the perception of it?
You hear stories. Everybody that I actually met in the department was, totally on board with it and okay with what they were doing, regardless of what they'd initially signed up for. I think what you're getting at is you can sign up for the State Department and say that you're going to be a political officer or an economic officer, and then you end up doing working on visas all day for 2 years or maybe even 4 years of your career, and that can be a big shock to some people, and can be kind of frustrating. I think I was sort of blessed by the fact that I went to smaller posts, so Kathmandu, Belmopan, Belize, and then finally here in Munich, where you really do kind of get to kind of sink your teeth into the meat of more complicated cases and do a much broader variety of visas. I mean, even within the course of the day, you're doing many different types of visas. Whereas some people who go to a much larger post, the Mexico Cities of the world or the Beijings of the world. I watched her interview with Mandy Zhang not too long ago, and she had a very different experience where you're doing 120 B1, B2 visas or more every day, and I think that could probably grind some people down.
Yeah, assembly line, kind of just the same thing over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Nepal. So you went to Nepal, beautiful place. Mount Everest, part of it is in Nepal. Is that correct?
Mount Everest is in Nepal. Yeah.
So tell me how that was when you got there and what your experience was in Nepal.
It's an amazing place, and I think everybody's first tour has a special place in their heart, and that certainly is the case for me. Wonderful, warm people, very interesting work there. I'm a cyclist. You can actually see right up here my little bicycling poster that I have. I did a lot
cycling in one of the most mountainous countries in the world. That's like intense. You got some good cardio.
So really good mountain biking there, and it was a great way to kind of meet some local people that I otherwise would never have met. Sort of, get out of the embassy bubble and out there into the countryside and really just kind of see the country in a different way. So
it wasn't one of those places where they'll say, don't go out, you might get attacked being a U.S. person or a consular officer, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, at the time I was in Nepal, there was, their civil war had come to an end, and all of the, everyone was kind of getting back to the business of day-to-day life there.
What years was this?
I was there 2011 to 2013, I think.
Something just popped in my head, and this is kind of sensitive, so you don't have to answer it, but how much is Chinese influence in Nepal, and what role did you have there to deal with that? Because I'm sure that's a sensitive location between India and China. China probably has troops at the border and stuff. Did that come up in political stuff? Is that something that the state wouldn't want you to talk about? Feel free not to.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think that, China is trying to play an ever bigger role in Nepal, and providing infrastructure support to the country. They have a very big embassy there. Unfortunately, we didn't have a whole lot of interaction with the Chinese diplomats there. I don't think the Chinese government liked them to interact with us.
Interesting.
It's too bad, but that was just the situation there. So I think you see China kind of trying to help out with infrastructure, and maybe to be a counterbalance against India, and the Nepalese some of them like to kind of play India and China off one another. So, yeah, and I think that's probably become even more pronounced in the past few years, more so even than I was there. I was sort of maybe at the earlier part of that process.
So there you're IV, but because of the small embassy, you did NIVs, IVs. What were the kind of issues that would be Nepal specific that would pop up?
It's a high fraud post. It's a high refusal rate post.
Interesting.
So, probably close to 3/4 of the applicants at the time when I was there were being refused for tourist visas. So, and then also for IVs, you saw, a lot of parents of Nepalis who'd gone over to the United States, maybe as students, gone into tech or other sectors, and then they had applied for their parents to follow to join them. We had interesting stuff in terms of health and tuberculosis and things like that. So there's close cooperation with the IOM, the International Organization for Migration, running the program as the panel physicians there in Nepal. So some kind of interesting medical issues that come up, and kind of working with IOM to make sure that what they're doing in terms of their screening meets U.S. government standards for people going to the U.S.
Interesting. It's one thing I talk about a lot with practitioners. The medical part, usually it's like a second, people don't give it a second thought. They just go to panel visits and come back. But specific countries, you got to be very careful, because that's going to delay things, and maybe waivers we needed. It's an admissibility issue. It's very serious. So you got to kind of, over time, you develop like which countries may have TB issues, or they give false positives on their tests, so they have to get additional reviews, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. And if you get, even if it's a false positive, it can end up being months. And if it is a positive, it can be, much longer than that in terms of treatment. So it was interesting. And then, also I mentioned the refugee issues, these Nepalis who had been in Bhutan and had been kind of kicked out of Bhutan were in refugee camps and were being resettled in the U.S. at the time. And so that's a whole interesting issue too. And then also the refugee followed to join cases, Tibetans, and that sort of thing, and whether, trying to suss out whether there's any sort of fraud involved in those applications.
Would it be kind of like sometimes Tibetans would come and say to Nepalese and make up documents and stuff, or what kind of fraud stuff would pop up?
Yeah, documentation fraud, relationship fraud, pop-up marriages, fraud in the underlying asylum petitions, whether, kind of.
So there was a follow to join family member, and you would review the underlying asylum petition?
We'd look at the underlying asylum petition to see if there was any sort of, inconsistency. For instance, if in an asylum application somebody said, on such and such a day, the Nepali army came and they raided my house, and this happened and that happened, and this person who's supposed to be the husband of the person who claimed asylum has no idea about any of this. That raised some questions that you needed to kind of chase.
Interesting. Down. Okay. So you're in Nepal, just doing a little bit of everything. I bet even the American Citizenship Services is probably interesting in Nepal.
Also,
yeah. And when was the earthquake? Was that while you were there or after you left?
No, I was in Belize when the earthquake happened. We did a lot of earthquake preparedness. So the embassy was well prepared. We had a couple little big earthquakes, 6.4, I think we had. So it's like good sized earthquakes, but not really big earthquakes by Nepal standards. I was in Belize when that happened, and I actually was fortunate enough to be asked to go back to Nepal from Belize to kind of do some assistance for not towards the Nepalis, but helping the Americans who'd been working there for nonstop for a couple of months, like shifts on the clock, and somebody just needed a little bit of a break to decompress. So I went in there to kind of help out.
And did you learn a language? Is it Nepalese, or do they have another name for their language?
Yep, Nepali. Learned Nepali to a pretty good level, and for the most part, it's still in there.
Is there overlap between either Chinese or Hindi or something like that for Nepali?
It's a lot. It's similar to Hindi. and they use the same alphabet. And I think if you're a Nepali, you can speak Hindi.
Interesting.
You can't read.
Well, good stuff. So you were at Nepal for 2 years, then you went to Belize. I'm guessing Belize is not a high risk. I mean, they have some sort of criminal issues in Belize that are kind of scary, but
but not like the rest of Central America. It's not like other parts of Central America. It's been sort of spared a lot of that gang violence so far. Fingers crossed.
And you're doing everything over there too. So what was the primary kind of cases in Belize that would pop up?
In Belize, you get a lot of people. There's a huge Belizean population, at least relative to the size of the country in the United States. So you get a lot of family members traveling back and forth. You have a lot of business interests, people buying cars in the States and selling them in Belize, which is also sort of an interesting from a fraud perspective. And then you get people who would go up for seasonal work, so H-2Bs, and then you'd sort of get the illegal seasonal workers too, so people who were kind of, had a pattern of spending every 6 months or something like that on a B1, B2, visiting family, quote unquote, in Belize, and those are cases that you really had to take a closer look at.
Interesting. And so how'd you like Belize? Spanish speaking, I believe, correct?
It's actually a British colony. Former British colony. So it's majority English speaking, but I did get some Spanish before I went down there, which is helpful. You get a lot of folks coming over the border from Guatemala. So people who do speak Spanish, you get people coming down from far southern Mexico.
How strict were you on third country national processing?
Not particularly strict. It's a small post, and the visa load wasn't too heavy, so it wasn't anything that we needed to clamp down on.
Would you deal with things like L1s or stuff like that as a primary tourist kind of stuff, and seasonal workers and family guys?
Yeah, I did. We didn't see. I don't think we saw hardly any L's. Maybe we might have seen a couple of weird Korean E's in Belize once or twice, but really that's the extent. There wasn't a whole lot of business visa processing. Occasional H-1B, but.
So the next post, what you went to was Munich, which is a high business kind of post. I mean, that and Frankfurt are our top ones. How is the switch of going from two embassies that really didn't focus on business to go? And how did you ramp up on just the study you have to do, education? Because it's E's and L's, there's complicated matter. How did you transition to that?
Right. Well, so Munich doesn't actually process E's, so
it's all Frankfurt.
I've kind of learned on my own, but in terms of ramping up on L's and H-1Bs and all the various flavors of B1 business travel, Munich has some good materials. So when I was coming here, there were a lot of materials to read, and then as sort of we have the general consular course through the State Department, the ConGen course. And that was a while back, but I was able to kind of dust off some of those materials and then sort of have a pretty good idea of what I was looking coming into Munich. But then obviously there's just a lot of learning on the job, because you don't know until these people start coming up to your window with the fact patterns that become the typical fact patterns. But the first couple of times you're hearing them, you got to kind of scratch your head. And
I mean, even as an immigrationist, every case there's always something new where you're like, how did you see this for so many years and there's still new stuff that comes where you have no idea? It's like, how's that possible? It's a never-ending process.
Exactly. You see hundreds of them or thousands of them. There's still new stuff that comes up. I think one of the interesting things in Germany too is it's manufacturing heavy. There are a lot of German companies that make incredible engineering machines that are used in automobiles, or you use in food processing, or you name it. And so you get a lot of people traveling to the United States on sort of medium-term business travel. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the trickiest things here in Germany is figuring out, what kind of visa does that person need? Where is that gray area in terms of what you can actually do on a B1, and how long can you actually spend in the United States? And sure, you're going to be paid from Germany, and then there's sort of the whole B1 in lieu of H-1B can of worms.
Yeah, I wish state would sit and just draw some lines on this. This is really something that frustrates me is, what is unauthorized employment? And some officers are like, well, if you're getting paid overseas, you're in the U.S., it's fine. Some people, I go as far as saying, if you do anything that an American could potentially get paid on, like, that's too risky. It's such a mess. And I wish there was better lines drawn, even if it wasn't that like that would hurt the clients in some sense. I just wish there was a line that we knew where it was, because they're always doing this kind of stuff and you don't know what. I mean, good thing on Munich is, when there's problems at certain embassies or the officers are not doing a good job, everyone hears about it. But you never hear about Munich. So I can say they're probably just, you know, the industrial hub right there. So again, it's like L1Bs probably. It's really high school people, probably O1s and stuff like that. So you don't really have to deal with as many of the problems that you would, or as you see like in London that's happening right now.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I think we had a good team, and the local staff that we have is extraordinarily good. Here in Munich. So, you know, even when the officers are making mistakes, a lot of the time the local staffs are kind of tapping us on the shoulder and saying, you want to take another quick look at that one, just make sure that you're comfortable with the decision. Not with the decision, but, you know, you're applying the law correctly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Munich was a fantastic place to work. But yeah, I think you're right. Maybe it's a little bit less complicated. You know, going back to your point about state drawing clearer lines in terms of what you can and can't do on a B1. You know, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I know
like we like our B1 exceptions and you know, carve outs and that sort of thing, and those are nice things to deal with, especially, you know, coming from a business immigration standpoint. You know, you've got an installer going in the United States, and they've got a contract that includes the installation as a term of the contract and that sort of thing. But, you know, I think there are probably some people in Washington who would like to just write all of those exceptions straight out of the fan. And then, you know,
yeah, especially on this administration, definitely don't want any changes. It's not going to be good whenever it comes up.
It would be good for immigration lawyers, sure, right? Like, we probably, you know, they'd be banging down our doors to try to figure out what the system is, but it's terrible for business. I mean,
yeah.
You just got a guy, you know, maybe he doesn't have a college degree, but he's the only guy who knows how to stamp BMW chassis out of aluminum, and he's been doing this for 40 years or something like that.
Yeah.
He knows his business better than anybody else in the world, and he's going to be in the United States for 3 weeks. Pardon me. He's going to be in the United States for 3 weeks doing, you know, his job, or teaching an American how to do his job. He's going to be paid from Germany. Let that guy go and do that on a B1.
Yeah, it's a good thing that flexibility. You know, in one sense, the flexibility of consular officers is frustrating because you never know what's going to happen. But it's good on this positive end when it's a person to person and they explain to you what they're doing. It's like, why hold this person back? They're bringing their skill, knowledge. Just let it go. And that part of it's really helpful to exist. Now for H1B in lieu of B1 in lieu of H1B, what, generally speaking, what would go through your mind and giving those? How often would those come about? It's almost this mythical thing that exists. That
right, and they don't even do them in a lot of parts of the world. You know, because I think they're problematic in so many ways. Germany is one of the places where we do them. You know, the question is, you know, how long is that person going to be spending in the United States? Is it a couple of months? Is it greater than 6 months, which is sort of that invisible line? Are they going to be going on a repeat basis for a very long period of time? Obviously, the question is where they're going to be paid from. You know, what is their level of knowledge? Are they actually a specialized knowledge employee? You know, is it a specialty occupation? Do they have a university degree? To what extent is it something that, you know, they just certainly couldn't find an American to do, or be difficult to find an American to do for just that short period of time? You know, I think one of the things that we saw a lot in Munich would be sort of the consultants. A lot of consultants, and there's a big difference, I think, between the consultant who you know, still wet behind the ears, just graduated from university and got their first consultancy job, versus the person who's, you know, been consulting in a specific industry for 20 years. That person clearly has specialized knowledge that would benefit an American company, the young or the recent graduate is less likely to be irreplaceable or
Yeah. Speaking about B1s and low H1B, I mean, inevitably, and this is a B category, which is not something consular officers could spend a lot of time with. So when you're doing that sort of analysis, when you have like 2 or 3 minutes, was it just bam, 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 or like you would give it more time because of the nature of it?
Yeah, I think you got a little bit more time because of the nature of it, and also, that was sort of the difference between doing it at a place like Munich and doing it in a place like Beijing. You can dig into a complicated case like that for 10 minutes, or even longer maybe.
Yeah.
And then you go and you do 20 Lufthansa flight attendants in 30 seconds a piece or something like that, and you kind of claw back your time.
So I was going to ask I forgot what the question was, guys. So, for blankets. So I'm assuming you got a lot of L1 blanket kind of cases that would come in, and those are probably quick for the most part, because I'm guessing it's major automobile manufacturers or Siemens or something like that. It should be easy enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think easy enough, but then you are the first person seeing that particular applicant. It's not like something that USCIS has already looked at before. So maybe you do actually have to take a little bit of a deeper dive and figure out what the person's qualifications actually are. They might be asking to work there as a manager. What does it mean? Are you actually a manager? Do you actually hire?
How would you interpret that? This whole issue of executive or manager, what is it or what not? Any insight of how DOS training is on their interpretation? Because USCIS is at this point is just making things up every case.
I got to say, I don't think DOS is that much further down the road in terms of giving very clear guidance to the field. I think within Germany, we did a lot of work to try to make sure that our adjudication standards were uniform across the board, no matter whether you were in Berlin, Frankfurt, or Munich. And in that kind of situation, what exactly is it an executive? What is a manager? Are you hiring and firing people? Are you controlling billions of dollars? Are you in charge of North America for a major corporation? Are you,
and then it was like a reasonable person standard. It just makes sense. And
and I think the only way to do that is sort of through norming sessions, right? You kind of get together with all the adjudicators in the country on a weekly call, and you say, this is what I saw, this is the way I came down on it.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw this and I came down a different way on it. How do you want to handle that? Also with those P1 in lieu of H1Bs, that's something that we had to talk about practically every single week to kind of make sure that we were all on the same page.
I did an interview with an immigration attorney here. His name is Ron Mann. Yesterday, I'm going to be posting that. And we're talking about technology and the use of the California bar wants tech companies to get involved. So essentially an algorithm does this kind of stuff. But what you're discussing here, when you have things like an L1 and the definition is vague and experience of an officer, all this good factor, a computer going to have a very hard time judging that because there's no algorithm for this kind of experience and knowledge and all that kind of stuff. For these kind of cases, there's always going to be a person, a lawyer needs to be there to prepare for every scenario, prep the client, and the client goes there, and then it's this, black box. Who knows what's going to happen with the MC, depending on training and skill or how just the client presents himself. Like I had one client who was going for a B1 actually to come here to do a piano recital at a church. It was kind of unofficial. I think she could have got a B2, but when I would talk to her, she would get so nervous on the phone, if it's from Brazil, that she just couldn't even carry a proper conversation. She was fluent in English. And so I'm like, you're going to get denied. I'm pretty sure. She's like, no, I won't. I'm like, yeah, if I'm talking with you, you're going to say the opposite of everything you need to say. And she was denied. So there's no way algorithms could fix just human tendencies and nature and speaking skills and experiences. It's so crazy. But it puts a lot of pressure on you guys. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you have to make that credibility determination too.
Yeah.
And an algorithm, at least where algorithms are today, can't really make that credibility determination.
Mm-hmm.
You plug in the right answers into an algorithm all day long, but that, whether or not you actually think that person's telling you the truth is.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. So now you retired from the foreign service. So how many years were you just with the U.S.?
So I left the Foreign Service. I was there for 9 years. I was on my way to the consular chief job in Mongolia.
Oh wow.
So would have been an interesting adventure, but for the most part, my family just really fell in love with Munich.
Mhm.
Um, we just have a great thing here, and we didn't really want to leave, so we just decided we were going to try to make a run at staying here in Germany.
Interesting. And I've talked with you before about the interesting aspects of a tourist visa for an American national going there with intent, which is different, and also the E2 process they have there. Could you go through that? I think attorneys listening would be interested to hear about this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so if you're an American citizen, you can actually come to Germany and you get a Schengen visa for 90 days. You don't actually even have to apply at the embassy beforehand. You can be admitted at the airport. And according to German law, now I'm not a German lawyer. I'm not providing advice on how to do this in Germany. But according to what I understand about German law, you can come to the airport and tell that person that you are here to look for work, to look for employment, and they'll admit you for 90 days. And then you have 90 days to kind of land that job. If you don't land the job and you don't get all your paperwork lined up at the end of that 90-day period, you got to fly back to the United States and you're done for a little while. But yeah, you can come here for the purpose of.
And you can do change of status there, because in the U.S. on ESTA, you can't do change of status. Germany doesn't have that restriction.
That's right. Yeah, you can do change of status on ESTA. You go over to the local administrative office with your job offer, with proof of assets, with a whole slew of documentation that they require, all certified and translated into German. Mm-hmm. And if you can get an appointment over there, they'll put at least a temporary visa in your passport for a little bit longer while you get the rest of your stuff together. So.
And so are you doing the E2 equivalent for Germany right now?
Yeah, I guess you could say that, right? So I have an approved visa for, I think it goes for 3 years now, and I've got 3 years to kind of get my business going. And then they'll look at that again at about the 3-year mark, and then decide if I've made a good enough business to stay.
And is this visa, could you go anywhere in the EU, or is this just for Germany?
This is just for Germany. So I have, my visa is very restrictive. I can practice U.S. law here. It had to be okayed by the Munich Bar Association. They also had to look at my business plan and make sure that, that they were okay with that.
How strict was the bar over there about it?
I didn't actually see their process, right? So, I submitted my business plan. It took quite a while to kind of get all the paperwork in order, and I think it's kind of an unusual thing to do. So it was difficult to get the local administrative office and the bar association to kind of talk with each other and figure out who was going to move first, who was going to issue the first set of paperwork so that the other agency could move. So, it was bureaucratically difficult, but I didn't actually see behind the process. So I don't know how close it was to actually, determining that my business plan was insufficient or something like that. I can't tell you whether it's easy or hard.
Interesting. So now you're an American attorney practicing American law there. Is it strictly focused on immigration, or do you handle other matters as well?
At the moment, it's strictly focused on immigration.
Awesome. So, welcome to the immigration bar. You've been doing it for so long, but now you're on this side. Did you ever think you were going to be an immigration lawyer, or was it just from experience and doing the consular code and stuff like that you fell in love with?
Yeah, it was experience in consular code, and I think, coming here to Germany and seeing that there is a real niche and a need for these kind of skills that that I decided to do this. So, yeah, it was nothing that it hadn't been like a long-term dream, although I'm excited to be doing it.
Yeah. So, I probably just see you doing a lot of full service immigration, but it's specific for types. I guess it's consular birth abroad, citizenship services, business kind of cases. What kind of and marriage kind of cases? Is that the general gist of the services you provide?
Thorny consular issues, people trying to, applying for visas and wanting advice on how to deal with their criminal record or other kind of administrative processing type issues going on. So just people kind of calling up and looking for that kind of advice. People with complicated immigration histories trying to return to the United States and needing consultation on that. So,
do the posts there permit the attorney to appear at the embassy, or are they closed off?
I don't think that an attorney would be permitted in anything except for a renunciation of citizenship case.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the old timers, I used to work for guys that started in the 70s. It's like, yeah, I would fly over and go to the embassy with them, but they shut that down pretty quick. Some embassies now let certain family members come. Like Australia allows the petitioner for like a family case to come, but I don't think they come to the window with them. They come inside, but not the window. Right. Like I had a guy whose dad was in Iraq, and he went with it because he was old and given an exception. Turkey as well, but it seems they shut that off. I mean, I can imagine they don't want the lawyers coming there and raising havoc. They probably had bad experiences. Like, forget this.
Yeah, I think we actually had a guy in Belize who came down from I think your state actually, and he was posing as the interpreter, but he was actually the lawyer. And
oh wow,
didn't make it clear that he was the lawyer, and then it kind of came out that, oh, hang on a second, you're also the guy who happened to, sign all of these documents as the person who prepared the documents. You're not just the interpreter. And how do you think the Bar Association would look on the fact that you're kind of not representing yourself as a lawyer in this situation?
Interesting.
It got a little bit uncomfortable for him. He, apologized and left it at
that. But. What a trick. So wonderful. So what are the plans? You and your family are in Munich. I think called München or something like that.
München, yeah.
München, yes. Well, first time I went there, I'm like, why does it keep saying München everywhere? I thought it was Munich, but for some reason they switch it up on the letters in the middle. You're there with your family. I think you have 2 daughters. So right. you have a busy lifestyle over there, and you're launching this firm. So how's on the business side? What have been? I mean, just getting the visa approved is good. But in regards to the business development, what kind of activities have you got involved in there?
Yeah, so having been here for 3 years already, and being kind of running in like the diplomatic circles, I think I've developed like a pretty good network here. So I've been trying to attend as many events as I can. Mm-hmm. I have been reaching out to some of the people. I guess I should also back up and say I've been sort of in the process of looking to start this firm for, I guess I've been thinking about it probably for 2 years or so now.
Yeah.
In the process of doing that, I've, talked with so many different people about, could we partner on this, or would you hire me to do this, or, all these different permutations. This ultimately is the thing I think that just makes the most sense for me, but to do it on my own. But in that whole road up to this, I've really met a lot of great people, and people who have invariably said there are people who need your services. Yeah. And so reaching back out to a lot of those people and saying, here I am, I'm set up. I finally have all my paperwork in order. So if you have anybody with immigration issues, or, any of your companies that you represent and other things, and you guys need somebody to come on and consult on the immigration piece, I'm happy to do that. And it's sort of been, I guess, most of my clients have been referrals at this point.
One thing I would say is just a tidbit for listeners is, in this kind of scenario specifically, have like a monthly mailer or bi-monthly mailer or something like that to constantly remind people that you're there, because I'll have cases pop up where they would need your services, but because just my mind will forget, I'm like, Matt's there. So if you constantly somehow, I see you and I remember where you are, that's going to help people just jog their memory. Oh yeah, we have a guy on the ground over there. Why not use it?
Right. Yeah, so that's a good point.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Matt. If people want to contact you, reach out and learn more about you, what are the various emails, websites, social media stuff they could use?
Sure. Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me too, John. And Matt at HughesImmigration.com. Hughes is HUGHES immigration.com, or HughesImmigration.com is the website too. So awesome. Appreciate it. Really good to talk to you, John.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any relationship to Howard Hughes, or is it just a coincidence?
No, and I'm still waiting for the sweet Howard Hughes money.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll talk soon.
All right. Good to talk to you, John.